This morning, Hollywood is remembering actor Michael Madsen, who died Thursday at the age of 67.
The actor, who had more than 300 credits to his name, was found dead at his Malibu home overnight.
He was the man with the sunglasses, the slow swagger, and that unforgettable smirk. Michael Madsen, the face behind Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs, a character so intense, so cold-blooded, that he terrified even the other criminals in the room. But behind the scenes, the real Michael Madsen was fighting a battle few ever saw coming, one that would eventually lead to unimaginable heartbreak. Rise of Mr. Blonde. Before he became the face of one of Hollywood's most iconic psychopaths, Michael Madsen was just a blue-collar kid from Chicago. Born on September 25, 1957, Michael Soren Madsen was raised in a modest household. His father, Calvin Madsen, was a Navy veteran turned firefighter, a man of discipline and service. His mother, Elaine Madsen, was a poet and filmmaker, someone who understood art and saw a different path for her son. Michael wasn't classically trained in the glamorous halls of Hollywood. He cut his teeth in the raw, emotional trenches of the stage, studying at Chicago's Steppenwolf Theater Company, a place known for birthing acting legends like John Malkovich and Gary Sinise. There, Madsen developed a presence that was impossible to ignore, intense, unpredictable, and magnetic. He started in small roles, films like War Games, 1983, where he played a military technician, and Thelma and Louise, 1991, in which he portrayed Susan Sarandon's on-screen boyfriend, Jimmy. These weren't flashy parts, but they revealed a key element. Madsen could say everything without saying much at all. Then came 1992, Reservoir Dogs. Quentin Tarantino's raw, blood-soaked directorial debut needed something different, someone who didn't just act like a killer but embodied one with terrifying calm. Madsen was originally offered the role of Mr. Pink, but he turned it down. He wanted Mr. Blonde, and what he brought to that role was chilling. Mr. Blonde, real name Vic Vega, was a sadistic, sunglasses-wearing psychopath with a smirk and a straight razor. The torture scene, set to the upbeat tune and Stuck in the Middle with You, became instantly iconic and permanently controversial. It was Michael Madsen's breakout moment, and arguably one of the most memorable scenes in modern cinema history. Even Roger Ebert, the famously discerning film critic, described Madsen as a very mean Robert De Niro. That wasn't just praise, it was a warning. Madsen wasn't just playing tough. He was redefining it. In that moment, Michael Madsen became something rare, an actor who didn't need to raise his voice to be unforgettable. He was menace, bottled, danger, personified, and the world noticed. The Tarantino connection. For most actors, one collaboration with Quentin Tarantino is career-defining. For Michael Madsen, it became a cinematic bond that would span decades and shape both their legacies. Their connection began in 1992 with Reservoir Dogs, where Madsen's performance as Mr. Blonde didn't just steal scenes, it cemented him as part of Tarantino's cinematic DNA. But it didn't stop there. In 2003 and 2004, Tarantino brought Madsen back, this time as Bud, the disillusioned, whiskey-drinking brother of Bill in the Kill Bill saga. Bud was everything Mr. Blonde wasn't: weary, reflective, seemingly broken. And yet, just as dangerous. His lines were fewer, his movements slower, but the tension he carried was lethal. Madsen's portrayal of Bud stood out because it added emotional weight to a film driven by stylized violence. He wasn't just a killer, he was a man hiding from who he used to be. And it worked. In a world full of swords, assassins, and bloodshed, Madsen made silence feel like a threat. And that's what made him irreplaceable. Years later, Tarantino would cast Madsen again in The Hateful Eight, 2015, as Joe Gage. The mysterious cowboy with a dangerous smirk and unclear motives. Even in an ensemble stacked with powerhouse performances, Samuel L. Jackson, Kurt Russell, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Madsen held his ground, like an old western ghost with secrets to burn. Then came Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 2019, where Madsen returned in a smaller role, playing a sheriff on a fictional western TV show. It wasn't a major part, but it was symbolic. Tarantino was paying homage to his regulars, those who helped shape his universe, and Michael Madsen was one of the pillars. Together, Tarantino and Madsen built a unique cinematic relationship, one founded on trust, edge, and a mutual love for the outlaw spirit. But what's truly remarkable? Michael Madsen's career wasn't just tied to Tarantino. In fact, it barely scratched the surface. Over the years, Madsen amassed more than 300 acting credits. Yes, you read that right, 300. And they weren't all blood-soaked thrillers or underground cult films. In Free Willy, 1993, he played a loving father in a heartwarming family classic. In Donnie Brasco, 1997, he went toe-to-toe with Johnny Depp and Al Pacino, proving he could hold his own in serious mob drama. He popped up in Sin City, in comedies, horror films, even straight-to-DVD indie flicks. Off-screen struggles and turbulence. Michael Madsen was known for playing men who were cold, dangerous, and emotionally unreachable. But away from the set, he was something much more complex and much more fragile. Despite the tough guy persona Hollywood carved for him, Madsen's real battles weren't in front of a camera, they were inside his own mind. For decades, he quietly wrestled with alcoholism, a struggle that followed him throughout his career. While he rarely addressed it directly in interviews, it showed in ways the public never fully saw: inconsistent performances, erratic behavior, and moments of emotional collapse on set. Friends described him as a man with a huge heart, but one that carried a deep sadness. But the most devastating chapter came in January 2022. His son, Hudson Madsen, a 26-year-old U.S. Army veteran, was found dead in Hawaii from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Hudson had served in Afghanistan and was reportedly struggling with mental health issues following his deployment. It was the kind of loss no parent ever truly recovers from. And for Michael, it wasn't just the loss of a child, it was the loss of hope. In the wake of Hudson's death, Madsen was reportedly placed under a mental health hold in Los Angeles, according to The Sun. It was a private collapse under the weight of unbearable grief. The tragedy sent shockwaves through his family and fractured his already fragile foundation. His decades-long marriage to Deanna Madsen, an actress and mother of 3 of his sons, ended in 2024. After nearly 3 decades together, the bond that had weathered Hollywood's chaos was finally broken. But there was another side to Michael Madsen, one almost no one ever talked about. In private, he was a writer, a romantic, a poet. He published multiple poetry books, titles like Burning in Paradise, When Pets Kill, and Expecting Rain. His writing was raw and personal, touching on regret, identity, fatherhood, and the bruises left by time. His poems read like confessionals from a man trying to make peace with the chaos he carried. In his final years, he was working on a memoir titled Tears for My Father, Outlaw Thoughts and Poems, a mix of life stories, memories, and verse. It was meant to be his redemption project, a book that could finally show the world the man behind the mask. Not Mr. Blonde, not Bud, not Joe Gage, just Michael. But that memoir would never be finished. He died just months before its completion. For all the roles he played, the real story was written between the lines. In every poem, every drink, every heartbreak was a man quietly asking to be understood. And maybe, finally, to be forgiven. The sudden death. On the morning of July 3, 2025, the world lost a voice that never shouted, but always echoed. In a quiet home nestled in the hills of Malibu, Michael Madsen, Hollywood's anti-hero, the outlaw with the poet's soul, was found unresponsive. The call came in early. Paramedics arrived fast. But it was already too late. Pronounced dead at 8:25 a.m., his passing was ruled the result of cardiac arrest linked to long-term heart disease and a lifetime of alcohol dependency. No signs of trauma. No final message. Just the end of a man who had spent decades living between chaos and calm. And perhaps that's how he always imagined it, fading quietly while the world kept spinning. Though the headlines came and went, those who truly knew him, family, filmmakers, loyal fans, felt the loss deeply. Among the first to speak was his sister, acclaimed actress Virginia Madsen, who delivered a tribute that somehow said everything in just a few words. He was thunder in velvet, mischief wrapped in tenderness. A line that cut through the noise and reminded the world that behind every tough guy role was a man with a deep inner world. Broken, yes, but also profoundly sensitive. Legacy and unfinished work. Though his name will always be linked to Tarantino's films and cult classics, Madsen never stopped searching for roles that allowed him to speak through silence, to tell stories that felt real. In his final years, he turned toward independent cinema not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Films like Resurrection Road, Concessions, Cookbook for Southern Housewives. These weren't blockbusters. They weren't box office bait, but they were his. Roles where he could pour in all the bruises, regrets, and truths he carried. But there was one more performance still to be seen. In his final role, Mr. Wonderful, Madsen played a professor grappling with family legacy, generational trauma, and the ghosts of the past. Early screeners suggest it's one of his most emotionally layered performances, delivered with the weariness of a man who had lived the pain, not just pretended it. For a man so often cast as the villain, Michael Madsen left us with a performance that felt almost like a confession. Not of crimes, but of truths. Actors chase fame. But legends? They leave fingerprints. And Michael Madsen didn't just act in front of the camera, he bled into it. Scene by scene. Line by line. Until there was nothing left to give. Michael Madsen's story is not just about fame or films. It's about what happens when the spotlight fades and real life steps in. He gave us unforgettable moments on screen, but behind those sunglasses was a man fighting battles we never saw. And through it all, the roles, the struggles, the heartbreak, he never stopped being a father. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because the stories we tell, they matter, and you won't want to miss what's next.